Good evening, students. Lately, we've been covering the Great Awakening and talking about its impact on American education. Today, I want to dive a little bit further into how the Great Awakening affected higher education, and I really want to discuss our Presbyterian roots in regards to higher education. So, two of the figures that we've been discussing, Jonathan Edwards and Gilbert Tennent, among other influential leaders of the Great Awakening, they decide to found the College of New Jersey. Now, that might not ring a bell to you, but you might know it today as Princeton University. They founded Princeton to combat the Deism that was being taught at Harvard and Yale. Now, Harvard and Yale, we know all about them, right? And we know the legacy that they have to this day. The issue here was that they could see the secular nature of education and where it was heading. So, Deism, we can describe that as a form of rationalism that asserts that the natural world is not contingent on God's intervention. Edwards himself said that these universities were nurturing neither piety nor prophets. Now, what does that mean? Simply put, they're no longer providing their students with a theological background that's going to spark revelation. So, when we look at this through the lens of current education, this is what we need to think about as far as Christian education goes. Christian education is not anti-science, it's not anti-logic, it's not anti-rationality. Rather, it's acknowledging that in everything we do, in every mystery we try to uncover, using rational thought, using logic, using science as our method, we're trying to unlock the mysteries of God, and we're recognizing that there's a creator behind everything that we are trying to understand. To segregate God and science removes the necessity for reverence towards God and his creation. What happens here is that we separate the material world from the spiritual world, and what's happening in this time period with Harvard and Yale is that they're saying that the spiritual realm and the material world, they're two things that exist, but they don't necessarily interact. And what happens when we separate things, I think of, and this is how I think you should think of it as well, when we think about civil rights and we think about the idea of separate but equal. Well, we know that separate but equal isn't reality. There's no such thing. You can't just segregate and expect everything to be exactly the same and exactly equal. So how they're looking at it, how Edwards and Tennent are looking at it, is saying if you separate God, if you separate spirituality, how can you say then that you're teaching a reverence towards God? How can you say that God is in the center of what you're teaching? Now, Romans 12:12 says, "Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind." This resonates with me, and I hope it resonates with you. Scientifically speaking, when we talk about studying things and using the scientific method, that is a transformation of our minds. That is the way that we perceive the world should constantly be transformed. It doesn't mean that a Christian educator is going to stay in one box. No, the Christian educator is going to push forward. The Christian educator is going to research. The Christian educator is going to instill the love of research and learning in their students. That is our legacy. That is the legacy that's been handed down to us from Edwards and from Tennent. It's the legacy that reminds us that as teachers and future teachers, when you go on and you have your own classroom, it's the way that you approach learning and approach teaching and approach transforming your schools. How do you stand up for something that is not in alignment with your belief? How do you perform in a secular environment? In the case of Edwards and Tennent, they created a new space for themselves. But it's important for us to recognize that science in a Christian setting should always be pursued with a clear conscience, rooted in the understanding that God is the author of life, the creator of the universe, and the omnipresent force that directs us towards the movement of every molecule. So once we keep that in the forefront of our mind, Teaching science doesn't become a hindrance. It doesn't become an enemy. Teaching rationality is not the enemy. It is actually our goal as Christian educators.